Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. Today we are here to review Lazio Milan, Saturday's night game, and probably, if we really have to, Alasdair, a little bit about the transfer market window that closed on Friday. That I don't know. It was one of the strangest one for Lazio, probably. I would argue
The deadline day or the total
the
mercato?
total one. The deadline day was classic, I would say.
Yeah, just copy and paste.
Yeah.
Every year, the combination of like being linked to exciting players, then not signing them, and in addition, being left with a load of players who aren't even in the squad. So, classic Lazio. Yeah, the mercato. Let's get to that later. I think we can talk about the Milan game first, but I agree. I think it has been a very interesting one.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about Danilo Cataldi, so get prepared for that question because it's coming. But yeah, let's talk about Lazio Milan. I said it was a game of two halves. The first one, Lazio struggled a lot. In the second one, we were much better than AC Milan. So, what do you think about Dia playing close to Castellanos? Because this was the biggest surprise, or at least the big change that we saw. It was pretty much playing with four strikers from the start.
Yeah, I mean, that it's something we touched on Friday when we were previewing this game, and both of us, I think, were a little bit skeptical, a little bit worried about how attack-minded that seemed to be. And I think in the first half, you could probably see why we were worried, because apart from the first 5 minutes, and the first 5 minutes looked great because Dia got really involved very quickly, dropping into that pocket as a number 10. He linked up really well with Tatis for that early chance when Pavlovic cleared it off the line. And you're thinking, wow, this is quite exciting to watch because it's such an attack-minded Lazio team. But then the rest of the first half, once that very soft goal was conceded, just nothing happened. They could not get into this game at all. I think we have to mention, Vittorio, for those who you can't see it through a TV screen, the conditions were horrible. I mean, the humidity on Saturday night was as bad as I think I can ever remember at a Lazio game. You could actually see kind of clouds of water vapor under the lights, and I could hardly breathe just sitting there watching the game. So I do think that played a part in the first half as well, with how slow it went after the goal. But yeah, second half changed, and I think we need to talk about the way Baroni's managed this game, not only with the Dia Castellanos decision, but also the substitutions he made at halftime, and also Nuno Tavares' selection, which was quite bold after so long without him starting a game, and the influence he had.
Yeah, let's start from the selection, because I guess a lot of us were surprised from the starting 11 Baroni picked. It was the first time Chauna started the game. It was the first time Nuno Tavares started a game. Very offensive-minded team selected against a big team. AC Milan is considered a team that will fight for the Scudetto. Not sure about that, but this is what rumors are. So very surprising selection. I have to say, after the Dia chances, I thought, oh my God, finally we started the game seriously. And then we considered a stupid goal, and I thought, okay, it's all my fault. I should have been quiet. But I think Baroni, we struggle a lot on the right side. Lazzari and Chauna didn't play a great match. And that's where Milan was tearing us apart, right? On that side, they had so many opportunities that luckily they didn't take. But I don't know. This type of Baroni reminds me a lot of Stefano Pioli first year at Lazio, with a very offensive mind type of selection. Do you remember that when Lazio was down, he was putting on like two strikers? We were playing with four strikers at the same time, very offensive, taking off a midfielder and put a striker and so on. I thought, again, risky selection. I thought the substitution were perfect. that's the reason why we didn't lose the game, probably.
Yeah, it was like you said at the very start. The whole atmosphere around it was so different from first half to second, because at halftime, when the whistle blew, there was a lot of boos, and quite loud boos, and I'm not surprised particularly. I don't think it was so much aimed at Baroni or any player in particular. It was just generally the performance was so lethargic and slow, and not what you want from your team, regardless of what the expectations are. Lazio, I think we have to talk about, because the funny thing about this, what you're saying there about how Milan targeted the left wing, and that was despite the fact that Fonseca left out Teo Hernandez and Rafael Leao, which is usually their left side, which is so dangerous and causes all the problems. But instead, they doubled up. Okafor was spending a lot of time out there with Pulisic, and they seemed to really target Lazio, and were right to do so, because honestly, the way they ran past him, sometimes it was like he wasn't even there. And we know Lazio's weaknesses in defence, but I can't remember a game where he's been quite as exposed as that in one-on-ones, in the way that players took him on and beat him. And when he came off at half-time, it wasn't a big surprise, but he wasn't getting the support from Shawnee either, which is probably why he ended up being taken off, as well as losing the ball a few times too many. So that was the negative from the first half, really, was the performances of those guys.
Can we say something? I thought in the first two games Lazio played, Lazio was one of the best in our team. So that was a little bit surprising. Probably, as you were mentioning, Chauna didn't help, and Lazio is not a great defender, so he struggled more than expected, I would say, because of that. But again, very bold idea from Baroni to play. I mean, Sarri always said, I cannot have left backs attacking, right? Both of them, one on the left and one on the right, right? One has to attack, the other one has to defend. And we started the game against Milan, not Salernitana or a weak team, with Lazio on one side and Nuno Tavares on the other. Two very attacking-minded. So that was strange. But I think, Alasdair, with the lack of quality we have in the midfield, we need to, right?
Yeah, and I do wonder, though, if that's going to cost Lazio, because Tavares was so impressive. The way he attacked, it made me think, like, God, when was the last time I've seen an attacking left-back performance like this? And the only thing I could think of was Jordan Lukaku in the Supercoppa against Juventus. That's the only time I came to mind of, an attacking fullback on the left making such an influence in a game as Tavares did. But it did make me think, will this be a problem for Lazio? Because getting taken off at halftime in the same game that Tavares wins man of the match, it makes me think, he's competing with Maricic for the right back slot now, probably. And Maricic is Mr. Reliable, isn't he? So the thing that Maricic, he's not going to get up the pitch and throw in the crosses in the way that Lazio can. But if Tavares is going to be such a danger on the left, excuse me, that might mean that he wants the more, the more reliable, stable option on the right to help find a balance there. I don't know. The other thing, I think, Maricic didn't light up the game, obviously, but he did create more stability on that side of the pitch defensively. But I think Isaacson did. I think we said in the preview on Friday, I was saying Isaacson's goal against Udinese, although it wasn't a game-changing moment, it was a big moment for him, and it was something he needs to build on. And I think he did. He didn't come out of this game with goals and assists on the board, but he did influence the match. He came on. He started attacking really directly, causing a lot of problems to the Milan defence. And I think it was his introduction and the momentum he created that got Lazio back into this game, that got everyone to suddenly believe again, because it was so sleepy before half-time, wasn't it? It was like people had kind of given up on the match a bit, and then suddenly it came to life with him.
So I really like Chauna, and I think he's a great signing, and he will be a very valid player in the future. But I was surprised to see Isaacson not starting again. I thought in all the games we played, when he came in, he brought life to this attack that was struggling. And as well, he did Saturday night. When he came in, probably Marusic helped him because he did more the defensive side of things. But Isaacsen is a player too important for us at the moment because he's very direct. He gets the ball and immediately he rushed to the goal. So, and it's not very easy to mark. Our friend Carsten always said, one-on-one, it's very difficult to stop him. So I think he's very important for us. And yes, he didn't make any assists, but he created an issue to the Milan defense. And I think that helped. Going back to Marusic Lazzari, I think Baroni wants to play with defenders that attack like that. So I don't think he wants to rely. It's not like Sarri anymore. It's not like we're going to attack on the left, on the right, we're going to defend on the other way around. We're going to try both ways, right? And he mentioned Pellegrini, for example. He said now with the Nuno Tavares and Pellegrini on the left side, we can attack because we have both left-footed. So they don't need to rush there, then come back, put the ball on the right and cross. They can do it directly with the left foot. And it's a huge advantage. Now, the issue is that, okay, if we attack with both defenders, then we are going to be offering our opponent the counter-attack, which happened in the second goal of Milan. But that's Baroni style. We have to get used to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he said as much after the game, didn't he? He basically wants as much quality on the pitch as he can get at once, and he wants to attack. He wants this team to accept, and I think for me, this is the biggest shift of mentality and approach that they're going to have to adapt to. He wants them to basically accept that they're playing a high-risk style, and that is so different from Sarri. Sarri was all about wanting to control every aspect of the game, wanting to have a system where you're not going to allow the opposition the openings. You're not going to allow the opposition the space. And that's a total mental gear change for this team, which I think the attacking players are going to enjoy. The younger players, the new signings are going to enjoy. I think as fans, we'll enjoy it some weeks. We'll not enjoy it so much the other weeks because it's high risk, high reward, I guess. It's the risk-reward balance where I think it can go spectacularly wrong. But it's going to be entertaining. And I think the balance still isn't quite there. I think second half, they found a rhythm in attack that they lacked in the first. But then they were cut open so quickly and easily when Fonseca rolled on all his subs for the equaliser. I think a draw was probably the right result on balance. I think Lazio will feel like they could have won the game. Milan will probably feel like they could have won the game. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't really know where he goes from here, Baroni, because I think we can say he was ultimately justified in the idea of playing Dia and Castellanos together because they both scored. And it did work at moments. But we also saw defensive weaknesses in there. We also saw a lack of structure at times in there. We saw the same problem with a slow start. We've now conceded goals in the 3rd, 5th, and 8th minute of our 3 matches. So for me, it's a really interesting one. We've had a win, a draw, and a defeat. The performances have all been quite different. So I think it's quite a useful time for this international break to arrive, which can often be very frustrating so early in the season. But I think Baroni will welcome it because it's a chance for him to really think about what he's seen and all these different games and what it all means.
You said, I'm curious to see where Baroni goes from here. Don't you think he's going to stick with Castellano Dia?
I can see him sticking with that, but what I mean more is how he builds the team around it, because you said you think he's going to go with Tavares and Lazzari, but then if you're having Tavares and Lazzari and you're having Shaun or Isaacsen and Zaccagni on the left and the right, okay, fine, that is a very attacking team where a lot of your attacks and your creativity are coming down the side rather than through the middle, which again is a bit different from how we played in the past. But then what does that mean about how you're protecting this defense? Because you've got to do something about that. Okay, you can be an attack-minded coach. That's great. It's great to see. But I think for me that lacks balance, the way the team was set up going forward.
Well, I think the secret is that what didn't happen in the first half and happen a little bit more in the second half has to be in place on the next game. I mean, the wingers have to defend. And what Chauna didn't do in the first half, and Isaacsen did a little bit, not that much in the second half, has to be done. Otherwise, you cannot play with Dia and Castellano there. To be true, Castellano is a fighter. We saw him a lot, tracking back, defending, recovering the ball, etc. But he cannot do it all alone, right? He needs that Isaacsen. I think he's going to start next game, and Zaccagni as well on the other side. They both have to do it as well, because otherwise we're going to be off balance. So this is the rule if you want to play with Dia Castellanos. Otherwise, it's going to be problematic. Maybe you can do it against weaker team where you're going to have ball possession, but against big team, this can haunt you. The other thing very important, Alasdair, is Lazio did press very high AC Milan. And usually this is something we see with Baroni. The biggest surprise is that it wasn't Castellano calling the pressing and going high. It was Rovella. And I thought that was one of the reasons why we considered the second goal. Rovella pressed high. The wingers didn't return. And there were a highway in the middle of the pitch for AC Milan to go and score, right?
Well, when that period of the game where all the goals were coming, I was watching, I was looking at the center of the pitch, and there's just no one there basically for either team. Like, there's almost no midfield left. And I guess that was the thing I was going to say to add to this point about finding the balance. If that is the plan, where you're attacking so much down the wings, and for me, I think I see that more as being a 4-4-2 than a 4-2-3-1, because I think the 4-2-3-1 we saw more in the first half, where Dia was kind of playing as a 10 and Shaun and Zaccagni were kind of on the touchline and playing more as wingers. But I think, all coaches just say they are just numbers. But I think if you do actually mentally think of it as a 4-4-2, that creates more of a structure in your head where you do think, right, if I'm playing on the wing in a 4-4-2, I have to be more defensively responsible. But yeah, I think it asks a lot of the two central midfielders. They are going to be crucial in this, because Baroni's saying we want numbers to get forward as much as possible. Okay, that's great. It requires risk. It requires bravery. It requires a lot of fitness and pace. But it also requires that the guys who aren't going forward, because you're not going to throw all 10 guys forward at once, that they're really smart in the way they manage the space that is being left behind. Rovella, Guendouzi, whoever is playing there, they need to be able to read the game really well, to intercept the turnovers, to make sure they're making tactical fouls if they need to stop counters, all this kind of stuff. I think it's a different role from it. Again, it's a big change from Sarri, where our central midfield basically wanted to be in possession as much as possible. I don't think they are going to be doing that under Baroni. They're going to be basically getting on the ball and moving it forward or moving it to the wing. And then their other job is to win the ball back again. So your point about Rovella is an interesting one, because I don't think he should be doing that. I think you need those two central midfielders to be probably quite conservative, really, for this system to work.
Or at least if Rovella presses so high, Guendouzi has to be in the center of the pitch. Instead, he was on the other side. So it was rather a mistake of Rovella or Guendouzi. By the way, I thought it was more a 4-2-4 rather than a 4-4-2, unfortunately. Very offensive mind tactics. And playing 4-4-2 with the Zaccagni on one side and Isaacsen on the other, it's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit difficult. What's your take on Tati Castellanos' performance?
Well, he scored, and he's already, after 3 games, got half as many goals as he got all of last season in Serie A. So that is something we have to be happy about. I don't think he influenced the game in the same way he did against Venezia, for example. But he did what he needed to do, and I think he does ask questions. We know this. I think that the thing we saw last season, and we spoke about at times as well, is that he is a guy who links up really well with the team, and he does work hard, and he holds the ball up nicely, and he knows how to use his body to manipulate defenders. His movement can be good. It was always about his finishing. That was always the problem with Tati. So I do think Baroni has probably spotted the fact that he needs a partner, and that's why I think it's great to see this idea of playing the two of them together, him and Dia, that they both scored immediately, and they both scored, Vittorio, from attacking the 6-yard box, which is something, again, under Sarri, we didn't see a lot of strikers attacking the 6-yard box. How many of these goals did we get where it was kind of get to the byline, pull the ball back? So I do like it. I think he needed it, right? I mean, what have you made of him so far? I think that 2 goals in 3 games is exactly what he needed to just kind of silence a bit of the criticism that was already, being written, basically.
Well, to be honest, going to the game, I was thinking, well, we have a big problem because he already played against Di Francesco, so his season should be pretty much over, goal scoring. So that was the first question I had with Castellanos. Instead, he played the first half. He didn't have that many chances, but he fought on every ball he had, so that was promising. I think having Dia close to him creates more space for him and so more chances. So I thought he had a very good second half. I was surprised to see him leaving, but when he left the pitch, you could see he was knackered. He was really destroyed. Probably, as you were mentioning, the heat. It was really hot on Saturday night, but as well, he was running for 70 minutes and he never stopped. So that tells you that I don't know if he can play like that for all season long. That's the biggest issue I have. But definitely with Dia playing close to him, Lazio is finally very dangerous. And obviously, Nuno Tavares changed the game. Now, the biggest question we have is he going to be able to play all games? Because he played 1 minute in May, and after that, last game he played for 90 minutes was in February. So this tells you a lot about the player. You were mentioning Lukaku. Yeah, I hope he's not Lukaku, because Lukaku was amazing when he was fit, but he was hardly fit in the last couple of years or so. So we definitely need a player like that if we want to play like Baroni wants.
Yes. I didn't expect it, to be honest. I mean, I know you've been excited by him. You like the look of him pre-season. You've made that point clear. And yeah, you were right. He looked fantastic. But I liked the signing from the start, but I never expected he would have this kind of impact on this kind of game. To make your home debut, like you say, first start since February, and he just looks so confident. I mean, there was even a moment in the first half where he won the ball back off a defender and he just went on this run. He ran like from left back position all the way into central midfield and, looking for passes and trying to create a chance. It's like, God, this guy, he feels at ease here. This is not a problem for him. Because I think on your debut out for that long, it'd be very easy to kind of play it safe. And he wasn't interested in doing that. He wanted to go. And the pace he's got as well. I read this morning that he clocked, I think, about 35 kilometers an hour at one point in one of his sprints, which is very fast. That's the speed of a car. So, yeah, I mean, it's really nice to see that, because I know I'm doing this a lot today, but it's compared to Sarri, it's so different, because we're used to Elsid Husay or Adam Maricic playing as a left back and just basically standing there and turning around and passing the ball back to the centre backs. So yeah, it's really exciting to see him make that kind of impact. Again, like you say, this is the problem though, and the question around this is like, this performance is really exciting, the style is really exciting, but like you say with Tati and with Tavares, they can't keep this up when we're playing 8 Europa League group games, when we've got Coppa Italia, when it's so many fixtures. So is either going to need a lot of rotation, or they're going to need to find a way of balancing their energy during games.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't mention is that with Nuno Tavares there, I think Zaccagni has more space and opportunity. Now, he didn't take them on Saturday. I don't think I saw the Zaccagni I was looking for in the first 3 games of the season so far. But with Tavares there, Zaccagni has more opportunity, because from now on, if Tavares is going to play, every team is going to prepare something for him, and this will mean that Zaccagni will be free, or at least freer than before. So this is important, because Zaccagni is one of the few players we have that usually wins the 1-against-1. Now, he didn't do that much on Saturday. He needs to step up a little bit. He didn't start the season very well, but this is something we have to consider, because last year, for example, everybody knew, okay, if we start Zaccagni, then Lazio is going to struggle a lot. Now they have Nuno Tavares, Zaccagni. If Isaacsen starts and play like he did on Saturday, we have a lot of players that you have to work on. So I think this is another thing we have to consider, thinking about Nuno Tavares playing, right?
Yeah, definitely. It opens things up in attack. And it should just create more space for the more dangerous players. I mean, the point you've been making is you're concerned about the lack of quality in this squad since the summer departures. And I share that concern, because I don't think we've got many players in this team, if any, really, who can kind of change a game on their own in the way that Luis Alberto might have in the past, for example. But Baroni's style might overcome that, because if you think about the questions that this asks of a opposing defense, is quite a lot to think about. You know, if you've got Tavares bombing on and Zaccagni kind of coming inside, and you got 2 strikers waiting in the box, and the crosses are coming in, and there's people moving around, and then Isaacsen's on the other side causing you problems and running at you. And I think at its most dangerous and most direct, that is an issue. For none of these individuals are kind of superstars, but that collective of kind of having them all there asking questions at different points, I think that's what Baroni has seen as his route forward. You know, that's putting them all together and getting them all in there is the answer for him. Like he says, high risk, but could be interesting.
High rewards? Who knows? Well,
we'll see. I mean, I do think the fitness thing and, you know, the fixture schedule, it's a nice idea, but as we've said before, Baroni's not used to this, and it's not begun yet. But after the international break, that's where the serious questions are going to be asked, because can you keep this up with Thursday nights and Sundays? And
yeah, and we have to consider the depths of this team this season. We have enough good players on the bench to keep it up? Because obviously we're not going to be able to play Dia and Castellanos every single game. Now, Noslin came in on Saturday. Can he be the player that is able to play as Tati Castellano did? Not sure about that. And we have to talk about the list, Alasdair, because in the Lazio presented the official list for the Serie A, and Hisai, who came in on Saturday, is out. So he's not going to be able to play in the Serie A games because we added Gigot. That's my biggest question mark. I don't think we have enough quality players to rotate and play Europa League, Serie A, and Coppa Italia at the same level.
Yeah, and it is frustrating to end up in this position where we have all these guys. I mean, getting onto the mercato, I guess. For me, this is forgetting about the signings for to just start with. To end up at the end of the mercato where we've still got so many players under contract who aren't needed is such a frustration. I mean, I don't know why it still bothers me because it happens every year, but, you know, Hisai being out of the squad, he's not the only one. When Basic and Agbag Pro, and there's been a whole summer to find clubs, and these aren't guys who are nobodies. these are guys who've been playing regular Serie A football, and that's the frustration for me is how has it come to this yet again?
Well, we are not good in selling players. That's the thing. I think, and I don't know, I didn't expect to say this, but Fabiani make me regret Iglitare. I mean,
well, that's what I was going to say. But Iglitare had the same problem, and then Fabiani's had the same problem. So is the problem them? Is the problem Lotito? Is the problem just nobody wants to deal with Lazio because it's awkward, or what?
well, obviously Lotito is the final issue. It's like when you're playing a video game and you find the final boss. Lotito is the final boss you have to beat.
He's Bowser.
Speaking with Sardo's agent, and he told me that he brought an offer from Juventus and Milan, and Lotito asked 2 million euros for a player who never played a single minute in Serie A. So, Lotito is always asking a higher price, but with some players like Basic, etc., you should simply accept what they give you. On the other side, I cannot believe that in Europe you cannot find a club willing to sign Isai. I mean, we can say that he's not Paolo Maldini, and I'm not saying he's Paolo Maldini, but he's playing for the national team. He's the captain of Albania, if I'm not wrong. He played the Champions League for I don't know how many years. He's an experienced player. He's a reliable player you were mentioning before. How is it possible that you cannot find a solution for Isai? That's not acceptable.
And it's not like he's coming off a season where he's not played. He was like a complete regular last 2 years under Sarri. So
I mean, I can agree, Andrea Anderson. That's complicated. He didn't play a game in 2 years. But Isai, it should be easy peasy, right? Roma is able to sell players like this, and we're not able to sell Isai. National team of Albania played I don't know how many games in the Champions League, and you're not able to sell it. That's not acceptable. And the blame is on Fabiani, obviously.
And it suits no one because it's bad for the club because they have to keep paying his salary. Obviously. It's bad for Husai because and the other guys because they're not going to get to play football. And it's bad for whichever club does eventually end up signing them because the guy they get won't be a guy who's just had a full season behind him. He'll be a guy who's basically been sitting in the stands and doing training for however many months. So, yeah, that is a big frustration. And for me, when we get round to, giving a score to the mercato, which we like to do, that always has to play a part because we're not just talking about the signings. We are talking about what else has happened. And that is a big part of your job in a transfer window. It's not about just who you bring in. It's about how you manage your squad. And how do we always end up with millions of euros worth of salary going to players who aren't even going to feature? It's crazy.
And the other thing is, then you go and sell Danilo Cataldi, and you don't sign any substitution for him. No players coming in. I honestly don't understand why we gave away Danilo Cataldi.
No.
He didn't take off any spaces. He's raising the Lazio Academy, so you had 4 spots available. Now we have none. No players rise from the academy, and you give away a player for free pretty much. Because it's not a Foloruscio Chemeno or someone else. We simply have 1 midfielder less. Now we play all full season with 5 instead of 6. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if you have a reason for that.
No, I was pretty upset by it, to be honest. And I think a lot of fans were. I mean, there was a nice banner in the Curva Nord on Saturday saying we want 11 Danilo Cataldis. And look, being a Lazio fan and Laziale and growing up in the youth system and all this, that alone shouldn't always, be a reason to keep a player. But in this situation, we're not just talking about that. We're talking about a guy who's been a reliable, good Lazio player for many years. And like you say, in a season where we're not trying to get rid of him to replace him with an amazing new signing, we've just spoken about the fact that the central midfielders in this team are going to have such a vital role. And I think having a guy with his experience and knowledge to be able to rotate in and out of this team or take off the bench would have been really important. And especially a guy who knows how to play in a kind of deeper role. which we just don't really have in this squad. So to get rid of him and leave Rovella as the only guy who really knows how to do that. I know we're not playing with a 3 with a pivot, but still you want to have guys who know how to hold, who know how to kind of, spread passes around. And like you say, not a big transfer fee. That makes no sense to me. And it's kind of upsetting. And especially seeing him come out on Instagram and basically write a very heartfelt message about how he wasn't expecting this. And I feel really sorry for the guy, to be honest. I mean, good luck to him at Fiorentina, but it's such a shame.
Yeah, and Baroni mentioned this at the end of the game. He said, for me, Rovella is not a play. He's more midfielder. So this means that Cataldi was the only one who was able to play in that position. So this means that Lazio won't be playing anymore with a 4-3-3 because we don't have the midfielder in front of the defense anymore, because that was the position Cataldi had. You took off option from your manager, right? Because we did the first game, Lazio played with a 4-3-3. I mean, we could switch depending on the game. Now we cannot, because Vecino played there and it was terrible. So really, I don't understand this decision, because again, you didn't get money out of it. You're gonna get money next year if he stays at Fiorentina. You didn't sign anyone to replace him, so you basically took a player off the squad without taking one in. And he was a Laziale. He never created issue. He's not the type of player like Luis Alberto. If he's on the bench, he's going to complain, etc. So this doesn't make sense. The other player we gave away was Casale. And Baroni at the end of Lazio Milan said he has to leave. Do you believe this one, Alasdair? Do you think that's the reason why we sold Casale?
Well, we kind of touched on this last week. I mean, he's obviously coming off a very difficult season, but he did have a second chance because it's a new coach, and not just that, but a coach who was picking him at the start of the season. Had a bad game against Udinese, but I don't know, maybe he did feel like his time was up. Who knows? But I'll reserve judgment on Gigot because I've not seen him play. But it feels like a bit of a shame to me that we've kind of given up on Casale off the back of a bad season rather than, trying to restore his confidence and make him the player he was the year before. And in exchange for a kind of guy at the wrong end of 30 who's coming into the league for the first time. So, it is a disappointing end. But maybe should we talk about the positives? I mean, what have you liked about this mercato?
Can I be in silence for 5 minutes?
Come on, you mentioned Shauna. You like him?
Yeah, well, I obviously we bought some interesting youngsters, and in a long-term plan, I agree and I like it. The problem is we're playing Serie A this season, and we always compete for the Champions League. I don't think this season with this signing we are going to be competitive. 3 years time, definitely. I like the signing of Chana because he's going to be really interesting. Dele Bashiro again, if we will give him time, in 2 years' time, he's going to be a really interesting signing. But for this season, I don't think they're ready. Yeah, I love Dia, great signing, but he's 27, right? So, I mean, if we see what Roma did, Juventus, etc., they have team ready to compete now. We don't. So that's the problem.
Yeah, but the thing is, the difficulty of judging this market is that this was always going to have to happen eventually. I think with a better sporting director and better management generally, the kind of rejuvenation of this squad and bringing the age down could have happened more steadily, which it should have done really since the Inzaghi years when we were already an old squad. If you're just gradually bringing in younger players, that's probably a better way than now. Immobile goes, Anderson goes, Alberto goes, and suddenly it's a bunch of 21-year-olds. I think, I'm more upbeat about it now than I probably was before the season started. I think Dia impressed me yesterday. I think he looks like he's ready to go. He looks sharp. I was a bit unsure after all the Salernitana stuff, the way it ended for him there. Tavares, obviously, massively impressive yesterday. That's a really promising sign. But yeah, I think overall, the squad as good as the one last season? No, it's not. We've downgraded the squad, and some of that maybe you see the benefits, like you say, in years to come. But I'm not entirely sure we will. I feel like this mercato for me, with one really big name signing, would have been great. I think even just that, because I think if you're losing 3 of your star players, you want to at least bring in 1 star player in return. And instead, we've lost 3 of our star players and brought in a lot of guys who are interesting and good, but no one who's stopped you in your tracks and made you think he's the guy.
I mean, I know you won't agree, but just signing Greenwood, this team would have been much, much better. Much better. I mean, we were probably fighting for the title maybe now. I don't know. But definitely, I mean, Greenwood was a game changer. Now we can argue about all the external things. But the problem is this one. You cannot say, yeah, well, signing Greenwood and then you sign Chauna. You cannot tell me, yeah, we have on hand, we are closing on a player who is 10 times better than Greenwood. Who is it? Because I didn't see him, right? So we are going to sign a very, very good 2005. Doesn't look we signed anyone of that age. So don't make promise if you cannot guarantee them, right? If you cannot make them, don't promise anything. The thing that annoys me more is that Lotito didn't say, hey guys, we are a very old team. We don't have money. We have to sell top players and start from scratch. We're going to sign very interesting youngsters. This year, we're not going to fight for the title of the Champions League. We're probably going to fight for the 7th spot. And we're going to start from that. No, he said, we're going to be competitive. We're going to be good. No, we're not. We are a very young team, promising. We're going to have a lot of ups and downs. And so this is it. No, we're going to be competitive. Lotito spoke after Lazio Venezia. You see what a great signing we did. But he didn't speak after Udinese Lazio. It's easy to speak when you win. The owner has to speak even when things go bad.
So if he bought Simone Inzaghi a Ferrari of a team, is this a Fiat Panda? What are we? What are we now?
Hey, respect to the Fiat Panda.
I love Fiat Pandas, don't get me wrong, but
I mean, the most reliable car ever.
I mean, just spent 10 days in one in Puglia. I'm not complaining, but
I mean, if you find a Panda of 20 years ago, it will be still working perfectly. So, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lotito maybe sounds like a strange thing to say, but this is quite a big year for Lotito because the undercurrent of unhappiness about Lotito's management of the club has always been there, but it feels like we're building up towards another big flashpoint. You know, there have been protests over the years, and obviously there was another protest that you were at not very long ago. But it feels like the rebuilding of the squad and all the kind of gambles, I guess, with Baroni's appointment and the signings that have been made and the guys who've been let go. And on top of that, it feels like a big year for the Stadio Flaminio and the stuff around that too. Well, I'm hoping it is a big year for that because it's about time something happened. Yeah. And all in all, I just feel like from what we've seen the first 2 home games of the season, all the chants, all the banners, everything has been about Lotito. So that is possibly going to build up into being quite a big story as the season goes on.
Well, the thing is, even Como spent more money in the summer transfer than Lazio. So this tells you a lot, right? This is the problem. It's difficult to compete. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, there was another interview with Iglitare, and he said, looking back, I have to say that we did an amazing job because most of the summers, we was having the budget of a relegated team, and we managed to finish in the top 7. It's hard to do it every single year, though, Alasdair. Roma spent 110 million euros. Lazio spent 30. it's 3 times more than we did. It's difficult to compete every single year. They're going to do terrible signing, but 1 or 2 has to be good when you spend all that much money. This is the problem. It's tough to compete when teams are spending 3, 4, 5 times your budget, right?
Yeah, and it's the main gripe of Lotito is him not being willing to invest properly and at the right moments or with the right amounts. And the counter argument that he might make about the fact that he's been spending bigger transfer fees in recent years on Murici or whoever, Castellanos. It's not much because you have to take the massive inflation in the world of football into account. Signing Mauro Zarate for 20 million back in whatever it was, 2008 or something, is not the same as spending 20 million on Vedat Murici in 2020 because the inflation has been absolutely enormous. Yeah. You cannot compare those things and say, look, we're still spending big fees. That's not a big fee anymore. It just isn't. And I'm not saying you have to be throwing loads of money around, but you can't be trying to claim that you're not being stingy now by spending that much on a player, because that much doesn't get you.
No, and the fact that the limit is 20 million euros, you're going to miss on so many good players. Again, I repeat, Greenwood, 25 million euros. That would have been a game changer. If you want a top striker, it's going to cost more than 20 million euros. You're going to find Ciro Immobile once in a lifetime at 8 million euros. Yeah. If you want to sign good strikers, it's going to cost more, much more than that. And you're not even sure that it's going to be a good signing, but at least you have to spend 30 to find a good striker. If you limit it 20, you're never going to find it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we are where we are. I mean, I don't think it's going to be. Well, we can reserve judgment. I think possibly the run of signings that Tare did have for cheap prices made them a bit complacent by thinking they'll always be able to do that. But you can't get that Lucas Leiva, Alberto, Immobile, that run of signings, even De Vrij, the guys they managed to pick up for smaller fees. It was a fantastic run of signings, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's sustainable to believe that you can always do that, because it was just it was great work. That's why Tari ended up winning, a sports director award for his work doing all that, because it's so unusual.
Or you have an incredible system of scouts with which Lazio doesn't have. Yeah. So, you have to find those players in the Georgian second division or the Egyptian leagues and things like that. Otherwise, they're already being bought by City, etc., etc. So this is the problem, Alasdair, I think, for Lazio in the summer transfer and going forward. If we don't rise the bar, it's not going to be possible to compete at high levels. That's why I think Lotito should be leaving the club. Not because I'm hating him, but because this is the limit.
Yeah,
with Lotito.
So, in summary, what score out of 10 are you giving the mercato?
Well, to be honest with you, it depends what's the goal. If the mercato was to have a team competing for the Champions League, it's 3 out of 10. If the goal is to compete for the Europe League, then it's 5. I don't think we are in a good position, but yep.
Wow. Yeah, I think 5 is about right for me, 5 or 6. I mean, I would push it up to 6 just because I do quite like the look of quite a few of the guys that they have signed. But taking off the points for the way, I mean, I don't think they needed to sell Cataldi or Ciro. I think both of those guys could easily still be at the club. And like we mentioned before, all the guys who've been left still under contract and not even in the squad is just unforgivable again. So yeah, I feel like we need to end this podcast on something more positive than these scathing reviews, but I don't know what.
Well, Nuno Tavares is definitely the positive sign, and I would say Dia and Castellanos scoring, that's encouraging. remembering what happened last year, we were struggling to score against every single team. I don't know how often we scored 2 goals in one single half last year. So that's definitely encouraging signing. And I like the Baroni's mentality, very offensive minded. I think it's going to be fun in some games. So, it's a pity we didn't finish the transfer market. I mean, we needed a couple of signings to be really good. As usual, we didn't. But, I mean, the season, I was watching Juventus Roma last night, and it was a dreadful game. So I don't think that the other teams are much, much better than us. They have more depth, definitely, than us. So that's going to be the problem. But it's going to be an interesting team, and we have so many youngsters to watch out, right? Chauna, Del Bashiru, Noslin, even if he's not really young. So we hope Hila comes back. Mandas maybe is going to play in the Europe League. So we have a lot of interesting players this time in our team. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, there you go. That was nice and positive. Nothing to add.
I saved the day.
Huh? Yeah, well done.
Thanks, everybody, for listening for this longer podcast. I'm sorry you had so many things to talk about. We're going to be back after we are playing next game. Verona?
Verona, yeah.
It's going to be a Monday game. Don't ask me why, but Monday night game at the Stadio Olimpico. So we're going to be back on Tuesday, I guess, after this game. Please rate and review the podcast. And if you like our podcast, you can support us at patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at $2 a month. Thanks, everybody, and take care.
Cheers.